Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today, I'll be testing this GPU right here. This is a Nvidia GeForce GT 440. This card was released back in December of 2011 for around $75. It is based on the Fermi architecture and my model comes clocked in at 780 MHz. This card also has 2GB of DDR3 VRAM, which comes clocked in at 535 MHz. This card has 96 shading units, 16 TMUs, 16 ROPs, and it supports up to DirectX 12. Let's find out what this card can still do today. Now, first off, it was time to unbox the card. I bought this card used online and it came packaged quite well. Alright, now it was time to take this card apart so I could clean it and replace the thermal paste. Here is a before and after of all the parts. Now, with all the parts cleaned up, time to put this card back together again. Let's have a look at the card itself. For video out, this card has VGA, HDMI and DVI. The card is cooled by this fan right here. This is how the fan sounds in idle, under load, and at full speed. Now it's time to put this card into my PC. This right here is my testing system. This PC features an Intel Core i5-11400, 32GB of DDR4 RAM, and a GB Aorus B560M Elite motherboard. Now let's boot up my PC with this card installed. Now it's time to install the drivers. Installing the drivers went well and without any issues. Alright, time for some benchmarks. First off, Heaven. In Heaven, this card got an average FPS of 6.2 and a score of 155. Let's move on to Minecraft. On medium settings, Minecraft ran quite well, averaging 94 FPS, with 1% lows of 34 FPS and 0.1% lows of 28 FPS. I would absolutely say Minecraft is playable on this GPU. Next up, Roblox. On low settings, Roblox was also absolutely playable. The card managed to get an average FPS of 59, with 1% lows of 45 FPS and 0.1% lows of 2 FPS. Light games seem to be no issue for this card. Freddy Fazbears Pizzaria Simulator once again ran absolutely fine, making this game another game that this card can easily handle. Ultimate Custom Night was utilizing 100% of the GPU, but it was definitely still a playable experience. The card managed to average around 25 FPS, so this game was perfectly playable. On low settings and in a resolution of 1366 by 768, Euro Truck Simulator 2 was also playable. The card managed to get an average FPS of 44, with 1% lows of 36 FPS and 0.1% lows of 35 FPS. Bus Simulator 12 was also playable on this card. On low settings and in a resolution of 1366 by 768, this card managed to get an average FPS of 30, with 1% lows of 23 FPS and 0.1% lows of 3 FPS. Moving on to CSGO, CSGO was absolutely playable on this card. On the lowest settings in a resolution of 1366 by 768, this card got around 90 FPS in the benchmark, and in-game the card managed to get around 75 FPS, making this game absolutely playable. Moving on to a more modern title, Train Station Renovation had to be ran in the lowest settings and at a resolution of 640 by 480, and even at those settings, this card only managed to get an average FPS of 22, with 1% lows of 16 FPS and 0.1% lows of 7 FPS, making this game really not all that playable. Next up, BeamNG Drive. On the lowest settings and in a resolution of 800 by 600, this game was actually quite playable, averaging 28 FPS and with 1% lows of 22 FPS and 0.1% lows of 21 FPS, this game can definitely be played on this card. Bus Simulator 16 was just barely playable. On low settings and in a resolution of 1024 by 600, the card managed to achieve an average of 25 FPS, with 1% lows of 19 FPS and 0.1% lows of 7 FPS. Now for a title that I would not call playable on this card, PC Building Simulator. Even on the lowest settings and in a resolution of 1024 by 768, I would still not call this game playable. The average FPS of 19 with 1% lows of 8 FPS and 0.1% lows of 3 FPS just make for a laggy experience. Moving on to Fortnite, Fortnite was surprisingly enough playable on this card. On the lowest settings and 25% 3D resolution, the card managed to get an average FPS of 50, with 1% lows of 24 FPS and 0.1% lows of 17 FPS. Fortnite is definitely playable on this card, although you do have to give up a lot in terms of visuals. And on to GTA 5. On the lowest settings and in a resolution of 800 by 600, GTA 5 was actually definitely playable. The card managed to get an average FPS of 51, with 1% lows of 35 FPS and 0.1% lows of 28 FPS, meaning that GTA 5 is a game that you can play on this card. Then it was time to overclock this card so I could get the most performance out of it. The maximum I could overclock the card was an extra 155 MHz on the core clock, so it runs at 935 MHz, and an extra 160 MHz on the memory clock, so the memory runs at 695 MHz. My card was definitely quite overclockable, which surprised me. Testing heaven again, the card now got an average FPS of 8, which is an improvement by 1.8 FPS, and the score had gone up to 202, which is an improvement of 47. Now testing Minecraft again, the average FPS weirdly enough went down to 61, but the 1% lows went up to 40 FPS and the 0.1% lows went up to 36 FPS. It's weird how the average FPS went down by so much, but there is definitely improvement to the 1% and 0.1% lows, and Minecraft is just as playable. Moving on to Roblox, the average FPS went up to 60 FPS and the 1% lows went up to 52 FPS. The 0.1% lows stayed the same at 2 FPS, but these were mainly caused by loading in new maps. Testing Euro Truck Simulator 2 again, the average FPS went up to 56, with 1% lows of 49 FPS and 0.1% lows of 45 FPS. Euro Truck Simulator 2 definitely became more playable after the overclock. Testing BeamNG Drive again, this game became a lot more playable after the overclock. The average FPS went up to 39 FPS, with 1% lows of 30 FPS and 0.1% lows of 27 FPS. And last up, testing GTA 5 again, the average FPS went up to 65 FPS with 1% lows of 39 FPS and 0.1% lows of 34 FPS. Overclocking this card definitely led to a lot better performance in games. And with that, it's time to uninstall the drivers and shut my PC down. Now, what do I think of this card? Well, in my opinion, this card is definitely still usable in 2022. Although I didn't have high hopes for this 11-year-old office PC GPU, it showed that even in some modern titles it can still provide a playable experience. You do have to turn down the graphics in most games, but if you're searching for a budget GPU, this card can definitely provide. I really liked using this card, and having it overclock so well is also a big plus. The card stayed relatively cool and quiet during use, even after the overclock, so if you're looking for a budget GPU to use in 2022, I would absolutely recommend this card. And with that, this video comes to an end. Thanks so much for watching, comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye!